and we are then able to issue correct information to our travel agents, or tour operators, locally and internationally, so that they know that this is a situation, this is a place. Because the problem that we've seen a lot of times is that when an incident happens, usually they have been in places that are not frequented by the tourists. But the international media will report it happened in Kenya. And if somebody is booking a holiday, they may not know, for example, how far the Somali border is to the tourist places in Masai Mara. And therefore, it's our obligation then to go out into the market, let the people know exactly where that incident took place, so that people can continue enjoying their holidays, as it were. The second thing also that we've seen, and we've also continued to do, is providing up-to-date information about what the country is going through and what is happening. A lot of these incidents started happening with Al-Shabaab, especially after the KDF, Kenya Defense Forces, went to pacify the situation in Somalia, together with AMISOM. Now, obviously, when such a thing happens, you'll expect that there's going to be retaliation. And this is what the Al-Shabaab have done in some of the places. And therefore, it's been very, very important for us to get correct and precise information from the government, relay that information to all our stakeholders, whether they are locally based, regionally, or international. And the third thing also is to ensure that we give up-to-date and correct information about the situation on the ground. And I think as a result of this, we've been able to let the international market, the regional markets also know exactly how the situation is, and this is why we continue getting visitors coming to the country, because they do very well understand that even after 9/11, people still continue visiting New York, and if you shun a country as a result of an incident, then you're basically telling the terrorists you have won, and nobody wants to do that. Thank you.
Well, certainly. Thank you ever so much, Mr. Debo. That's brilliant. And I think I will come back to you just so you can also help give us some tips on how we should manage it in other parts of the continent as well. I'm going to address my next questions to Pelisa. And Pelisa, like I said, is from the Johannesburg Tourism Company. Pelisa, developing a destination, that cannot be an easy task, and you have taken on one of the, I think one of the most important cities of the continent, Johannesburg. How has Johannesburg grown to become a tourism destination? I mean, for a long time, people assumed that it's just the hub, it's where the economy, money is made in Johannesburg, and suddenly we're now wanting to sell it as a tourism destination. How do you believe Johannesburg has been sold as a tourism destination?
Well, thanks, Maud. First of all, my surname is Man. I always have to correct that.
Yeah, thank you, my dear.
Well, we know Johannesburg is a place where people come to get jobs, where people come to enrich themselves. You know, that's the nature of our destination. Now, there's a difference between what we as Johannesburg have and what Cape Town or Durban have. So if we understand our market as Johannesburg, that is where we have to capitalize on. So we are capitalizing on our strength as a business destination. So we are not trying to compete with Cape Town. We don't have the sea and the mountain. We are not trying to compete with Durban. We don't have the sea. We have business. We are the business capital of South Africa. That we understand. So that is our strength. Now, in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, when there was the WSSD, that was the birth of Johannesburg Tourism Company. And the focus of Joburg Tourism Company was mainly to sell the destination and focusing on its strength as a business. Where we need to understand the value of tourism in the economy and also try to enhance what we have as a destination, you know, in terms of supporting the industry. Now, these facilities, or let me say, the entities within the government, that support the industry, as Mr. Mbingwa was saying, the importance of government and the private sector, that there's a collaboration. So how the government supports tourism is very important in terms of growing it. And in Johannesburg, when JTC, Johannesburg Tourism Company, was formed, that was the main objective, to support the industry, to try and understand and work together. Because there needed to be that body, that overseeing body, you know, that integrates or that collaborates the industry. So we had that and tried to work with the industry and to make sure that there's coherence and so on and so on. I don't know if I've gone beyond.
You definitely have, but what I'd like to hear as well from you, Pelisa, is with regards to the 20-year journey. And you did mention that the WSSD sort of kick-started with, you know, through into what we now call the Johannesburg Tourism Company. What are some of the challenges that you have come across in building that destination? I hear you talk about the strengths of the city as a economic hub. So my understanding at this stage, and I hope I can be corrected, is that it's a business destination. And a business destination that you're sending out there into the community. But how has the rest of, the rest of Johannesburg reacted or responded to your drive to grow this destination as a tourism destination?
Well, it's three areas actually. One, you know, when we form a body, the destination management body, like the Johannesburg Tourism Company, those bodies are funded by government. So one way or the other, you have to answer to the political principles. And unfortunately, they come and go. So we constantly have to educate them to say, we need funds, we need budgets for A, B, C, and D. And for them, sometimes it takes too long to understand that, okay, tourists don't just come, they don't just land. You have to work on it to prepare the destination. So it's a constant education that we have to do. The second one, as Joburg, is the understanding by the locals of our destination. Yes, your question, hence I said within Johannesburg understands that it's a business destination. The locals themselves tend not to understand that actually this is what we offer tourists. So that education, again, it constantly has to be taking place. And also understanding their destination that yes, we might not be having the sea and the mountain, but we have this, which works for us, right? That's the second one. The third issue is the issue of crime. That tends to be a problem as well. And it also goes back to education again, of the locals and everybody else, that crime has an impact on growing this industry. So yeah, those are the challenges that we face.
Thank you so much. You know, you spoke about WSSD as one of the milestones, and it helped kick in, you know, a lot of more travel into Johannesburg and a different perception of what Johannesburg had to offer. If you call back within the 20 years, are there any other great milestones or events that you feel have contributed towards scaling you into a national and a regional and African awareness of what Johannesburg is about?
Well, except for the fact that right now we are ranked number 4 in the continent in terms of, in the ICA rankings. I was telling Enva area that they beat us again.
Well, it's always Cape Town, isn't it?
And even Nairobi beat us this time. We're number 4 in the continent. So, well, there are a lot of other activities that took place. One that I can think of, is the World Cup. The opening and the closing of the games took place in Johannesburg. So that put us on the global map. It really helped Joburg, and the perceptions, the negative perceptions that we had were sort of, dealt with. Yes, we're post-2010 now,
Yeah.
so we have to rework that, those perceptions and make sure that, we're back in line.
Wonderful.
But in terms of the ICA rankings, yes, we sell ourselves as a business destination. We go out and attract conferences and events. So that's our market.
When you talk of business travel into Johannesburg, could you sort of give us, if you can, off the top of your head, if you can recall, what is sort of the number of bed nights or overnight stays in Johannesburg for a business traveler?
On average, it's about 2 days.
It's about 2 nights.
2 nights, yes,
Okay.
2 nights.
Does that get shared out equitably? Do you think that small businesses get a share of that, or are we just concentrating most of the business around Sandton? Because, the perception, like I said, is that people say, okay, business travel into Johannesburg, the majority of my business is going to be around Sandton, Rosebank, and maybe a little bit of the CBD. And I'm going to, spend my time in that area. And those businesses are the businesses that benefit. Do we ever get any overflow that goes into small businesses outside in terms of the community getting a share?
That's a $1 million question that we just had a tourism roundtable where Gillian and I were participating. It is true that Sandton is benefiting more from business tourism than other areas in Johannesburg. And it's something that needs to be addressed. And it's something that if we want SMMEs to benefit from tourism, or even other players in the industry to benefit from tourism, we need to make sure that there's a spread of tourists to other areas and not concentrate tourists to Sandton. Because at the moment, if we talk business tourism, that's where they go in Sandton. You find that, yes, there's a Gallagher estate, there's a Nazareth, yes, and other small venues that do not necessarily, or even the accommodation facilities in those areas, that do not necessarily benefit from this business tourism that we're talking about. So, there's the Soweto Hotel. Fortunately, Lindiwe is here. There's the Soweto Hotel. Soweto on its own is a brand. And I am sure that their occupancies are not as good as they should be. And it's something that, we work very hard to make sure that we direct tourists to Soweto. But, you cannot force a tourist when they say sometimes, I don't want to sleep there, I want to sleep there.
Most certainly.
So it's something that we constantly address to make sure that they go to other areas. It's a challenge, let's say that, yes.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move across to Lisa. We'll come back to you, Lisa. Lisa, you've been involved in the promotion and the development of entrepreneurship in the tourism sector for a number of years. And looking back 20 years from where we are today, I don't know how long has TEF been involved in developing SMMEs versus the 20 years of where we are at today. What do you believe has helped, the focus of TEF? What has been their main focus?
Okay.
11 years or so?
Yeah, we've been around for quite a long time. We've been around for about 12 years. Initially funded by the private sector through the Business Trust, and then a partnership formed between the Business Trust and the National Department of Tourism, and now we're mainly funded by the National Department of Tourism. The focus of TEP is on the growth and the development of tourism small businesses, so really to support tourism small businesses. And we do quite a bit of research on an annual basis to try and determine what the needs are of tourism small businesses, because this changes. As the economy changes, as the tourism market changes, the needs of tourism small businesses change, and we need to keep up with that. So our focus over the past few years has really been skills development, it's been mentorship, it's been market access, and it has been funding. And we really like to see ourselves as the voice of tourism small businesses. And the thing that has helped us is good partnerships with government and good partnerships with the private sector. To pick up on your point, you know, we don't see trickle down. I'm saying we, I see myself as the tourism small business. Our tourism small businesses, they really don't see trickle down of the numbers to their products unless it's actively facilitated by an organization such as TEP or by the government departments. They really are blocked in terms of domestic and international tourism. People stay over there if it's government, or if they want a one-night experience at the product. Otherwise, they actively choose the Sandtons, the Cape Town CBD. So it's quite difficult. And what we try and do is to be that voice for tourism small businesses, to raise awareness, to change perceptions, and to just create a platform for tourism small businesses to say that these products are there, they are of the right quality, and we do a lot of work to ensure that they have the capacity to meet the needs of the industry, and to ensure that the quality is right.
Thank you. When you talk about the SMME in tourism in South Africa, I think, you know, for those that are visiting South Africa for the first time or have never heard about TEP, perhaps just describe the sort of the characteristics of this SMME that you're referring to. Who would qualify to receive assistance from the likes of TEP? So that even as we go forward, we have sort of we can visualize who this SMME is that you've been working with. Because you also mentioned just a few minutes ago that the needs have changed. So in understanding that the needs have changed, why have the needs changed? What is it that has happened or that you've noticed that has made the need of the SMME, evolve?
Okay, we assist all SMEs across the tourism sector. Our only requirement is that they have to be legally registered as a business. Sorry. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, we assist all tourism enterprises. Okay, the requirement is you have to be legally registered as a tourism business. You have to at least be in operation for about 2 years. We have limited funds, and we find that most tourism small businesses fail within a period of 2 years. So we try and target those that have a greater degree of success. With limited funding, we have to try and assist those that have a great opportunity to be sustainable. So those are the only requirements. We assist enterprises that are accommodation establishments, guest houses, tour operators, travel agencies, tourist guides, restaurants, shebeens, the entire spectrum.
Okay, so the needs that we had 10 years ago, that we spoke about when you mentioned that these are the needs of that SMME, finance, skills, etc. Are they basically the same today, or do you see a totally different type of SMME walking through your doors and saying, well, I need something different. I'm looking for this.
I think 10, 12 years ago, the focus of South Africa as a whole was really on product development and the development of the tourism SME, and the gap was the facilitation of market access. So we thought, and when I say we, I'm talking about the industry, government, private sector, we thought that if we threw money at tourism SMEs, that would solve a lot of the problems, but the gap was market access. Tourism SMEs were not incorporated in the entire tourism value chain, and that was a gap. So the need is for SMEs for a platform to be created for them to facilitate access to market. Because we were developing these skills, and yes, there is still a need for skills development, there always will be. There will always be a need for funding, but facilitation of access to market. So we were training our SMEs to death, really. We were mentoring, but there were no bums in beds. And bums in beds creates profitability, it creates sustainability. And that was the major gap.
So that's one of the lessons that we've learned over these 20 years or so of our entry into the tourism sector in a democratic country. What do you believe TEP should be doing going forward into the next 20 years?
Yeah, that's a
difficult one. Yes.
That's a difficult question. But you know what I'd really like to see, and learnings from the past, is we focused on huge numbers. We assist about 3,000 tourism small businesses. That's a lot of tourism small businesses. And the question is, should we have rather assisted 300 and provided more one-on-one assistance? So my personal opinion is, focus on one-on-one and give longer-term assistance rather than shooting, I'm not saying shooting in the dark, but I'm saying trying to, we're spreading ourselves very thin. Yes, we do have a footprint nationally and we do really good work, but you can only help one SME with one training session, and you can't expect sustainability from one training session. So I'm saying we'd like to use the funding that we have and provide longer-term support to perhaps fewer SMEs, but making it more valuable and looking at the longer-term sustainability rather than spreading ourselves very thin.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. My next question is addressed to Mr. Dumini. Is that correct? I hope I am getting the names right. Thank you. Enver, you represent Cape Town, and that's the city that's hosting us here today. How has Cape Town positioned itself over the past 20 years as a destination in terms of transformation? I think that is very key in this discussion here as well, because it is a destination well known, has lots of accolades all over the world, but when we want to address issues of transformation, where have we seen that destination over the last 20 years?
Good morning, everyone. If you're looking at Cape Town and the city from a position of transformation, the question is, what is your definition of transformation? Because I think that's always the point of departure, and most people normally go into the sense of around the racial lines, etc. Do you see it happening in the industry? I look at it from a few schools of thought, and I think the first one that we normally need to look at is transformation as a tourism industry, because that's where the expertise lies. And if we go back to before 1994, Cape Town did have a tourism industry, but what it was in the 50s, 60s and 70s, it was about the foreign traveller. Because most of those people were from UK, Germany, they had family here, and you would have a lot of visiting friends and relatives coming to Cape Town, and there was that trickle of tourism. But if you're looking at from 94 on, I think, like Gillian said, there was the Cinderella story. You know, the world opened up, South Africa was the gem, everybody wanted to go there. And I think it's kind of a psychological thing, is that people said, we could never go there before, oh, we would like to go there, and then everybody comes. And when they come here, it's then the surprise for them is that what we have on offer. And I think sometimes we as South Africans, not only Cape Townians, we don't take what we have, you know, and appreciate it enough. And when foreigners do come here, they actually see the beauty and the gems that we have. And I think that is the thing that keeps them coming back, which is important from a tourism perspective. It's not just about the first-time visitor. So if we look at the journey of tourism in transformation, from a marketing perspective as Cape Town Tourism, I don't think we deliberately marketed the transformation in the city and in the destination. But what we did do is that we focused on both iconic as well as the unexpected. And I think it's in that paradox we'll find, you know, a bit of transformation. Because what we sold was a story of a city of hope, of inspiration, of opportunity. And how that translates into the ears or the eyes of the visitor or listener is important. Because as much as, yes, you want to talk about transformation, I think if you look at the generation of today, they don't care, pre-1994, they don't care about it. And that's the future traveller. So for us, the important thing is to say, yes, there has been transformation to the extent in the industry. I think it's still dominated by a visitor which is from our key source markets, Germany, US, Netherlands, and the market is still offering them the Western offering. Now, if I look at it from an African perspective, and we've seen the numbers increasing from the African market, what the industry in Cape Town is not ready for is how to deal with that consumer. Because the consumer is coming here with cash. And the first thing they ask you is, give me your credit card details. And I think that's again where we ourselves are not understanding transformation from the change of a visitor. And that's what Cape Town Tourism did. I think in about 2009, 2010, we actually put the visitor in the center of everything we did. And what we did is we built everything around that, the messaging, the industry itself. And I think the partnership between the city and the industry is critical in this. Because it's not about just the promise, it's about the experience in destination. So for us, the transformation comes in from both the visitor, the industry, but also from a recognition that you've got so many gems. It's how you sell that to a market without making it seem too closely to say, I'm forcing transformation.
Emma, thank you ever so much, but here is my next question. You have a country that's promoting domestic tourism, and you have quite a large target market that you could actually segment and bring on board. How do you intend as a destination to bring that domestic market into Cape Town? Because the norm with a lot of people is the year comes along, at the end of the year, we're all tired, etc., etc. But Cape Town would love to go there. We wish we could afford it. So the first thing is, I haven't saved up enough for Cape Town. I've saved up enough to do something else or go elsewhere. How are we, as Cape Townians, looking at the domestic travel? And yes, I hear you when you speak about transformation and having spoken to the traveler, but are you speaking to the domestic traveler who can afford to come to Cape Town?
I think that's a really good question, and the reason I say that is that you use the words can afford. And I think the perception of Cape Town has been that it's expensive, which is not the truth. I mean, if you look at the latest results from TripAdvisor, if you look at the spend within accommodation, it is affordable. You have everything from 6-star luxury, which I hear is a new thing now, instead of 5-star, right down to backpackers, to B&Bs, to guest houses, and that's where the trickle-down effect can happen. The question is, how do we get those products to market so that people can say, well, I know there's value in the destination. And I think that's a surprise that a lot of people just look at Cape Town as this, the sun and sea and the expensive bits. I would love to stay in a 5-star hotel, I'll be honest with you, but I can't afford it, and that's the reality. But it's also about what is the access for consumers. Because again, it's still seen as a grudge purchase. It's about the luxury. When I have the money, I'll do it. And it becomes a cultural thing. And I think if you look at it, me growing up, travel was never part of my culture growing up. For us, travel was going to visit a family member, in the next town. That is as much as what I got to. But you would stay, not in a hotel or in a B&B, you would stay with friends and relatives. And if you look at the stats that Gillian had put up, you see that shift. It's increasing in those numbers. So the thing is that hotels, are offering the values, but are they speaking to the right consumer? Are they going to be speaking to the person sitting in the home, in Mitchell's Plain, saying, if you're going to go to George, you can actually afford to stay in a hotel? Because most people don't think of that. They always see the flash when it comes to advertising. And I think it's important to connect that. So as Cape Town Tourism, what we're doing is we are repositioning, selling the destination. It's about showing everything from 5-star to backpackers, to luxury, to affordability. But the important thing is also to look at the cost of travel. Because that's where it comes in. It's easy as a single person to travel, or maybe with a partner to travel. But the minute you start adding on kids, and we know as our families, we have lots of kids that go with us, and sometimes extended kids and extended family, it starts adding up. And I think that's the big problem, is that when you start bulking it together, then it becomes extremely costly, whether you're going to go to Cape Town, or go from Joburg to Durban, or Durban to Joburg. It's the same effect. So I think it's about understanding the consumer, making sure that we can provide the products that speaks to that market, show the affordability of it, and then look at mechanisms. And if I look at what Mango has done with Edgar's, they are going into the market and saying you can afford to travel by using something that you normally would spend your clothes on, but they're creating the culture. I know there's other institutes are looking at how do they access the markets through the stock file. Because again, it's how do you infiltrate this, or changing that, shift in that culture, which will take time. But I think it's also about how do we market and position that we have all of this to offer to the domestic market.
Awesome. Thank you very much. If you're developing a destination and like you're doing with through Cape Town tourism, what do you believe are the key factors, apart from the ones that you may have mentioned, as you were talking earlier? What are some of maybe the other factors that we just need to know about that assist you in developing that destination?
I think for us, when we look at the factors that will drive tourism forward for us, it's about awareness of the destination, like I said before. I think the second thing is around the perceptions of the destination. And I think, in my view, perceptions delay reality. Because if you feed into it, is that when it starts becoming something that's real. And the perception for us, and I'll be honest with you, it's around Cape Town is still seen as elitist. It's still seen as non-friendly if you're not from Cape Town, very cliquey. If you look at it and say, well, if you are not white, you're not welcome. And I think those are kind of perceptions that's there that feed itself in the media. But for us as a tourism industry, that if you look across from it, it's not the case. So it is about the perception of destination, which becomes a big challenge for us. It's also about the safety perceptions. Because again, when you look at it, if something happens on the mountain, and the mountain is huge, the entire city and the province is kind of labeled with that. So for us, it's about how do we address those perceptions in dealing and working with media to portray the right story. The other thing also with drive is, which something that is good within Cape Town, is a cohesive tourism industry. I think when we went, now going back to when Cape Town wanted the Olympics in 2004, we failed. And the reason why we failed because the industry was not cohesive, it was fragmented. And what they forced us to do as an industry is come together, and that's where Cape Town Tourism was formed. And it's through that, and working then with the city, where the city gave us a marketing mandate, it's about finding those things and that balance of being able to work together, to share and build a destination. And it's not overnight. I think another thing for us is important is about the access to public transport. And with the My City, accessibility to every part of the city becomes key for that, which allows people to become visitors in their own city. Because I think that's always a question, is that saying, and we tested it before, we said, when we run competitions, we say, well, there's a competition to go up to Table Mountain, up the cableway, and people win. And they say, well, how do I get there? And it's sometimes factors that you don't think of, but you are promoting destination. So for us, it's about how do we make tourism real within our communities, how do we make sure beneficiation goes back into those communities, but how do we get those products to actually be on the fore when we start creating market accessibility. And as Cape Town Tourism, the important fact I just want to share with everyone is that 25% of the members of Cape Town Tourism are SMMEs. So we're not just about, and I think again, perception. And for us, these are opportunities where we actually share the reality of that. We deal with SMMEs. They come into our offices and they say, the first thing they want is funding. As much as you say, well, show me your business plan, let me take you through it, let me give you access. They don't understand those mechanisms. And secondly, when you ask them, well, why are you building this in that area? Is it close to your market? Is it close to a supplier? They don't know. But I think that's one of the challenges of the industry for us, is that there are low barriers to entry in tourism. And that's what makes it easy for anybody to get into tourism. And the challenge is sustainability. So I think the challenges that's faced by TEP, by Kenya, by Joburg are real within Cape Town as well. The question is that what we've done is, as an industry organization, we became cohesive. We started working with the city in order to promote those stories.
Thank you ever so much, Eva. Now quickly going to go around just for one last question, and I think what we'd like to learn from each panelist here this morning is to find out advice, what they've learned, what they'd like to share. And I'm going to start off with Mr. Ndegwa from the Kenya Tourism Board with my last question to say, what is it that you would like to share with South Africa, with the rest of Africa, with regards to growing a destination and growing a tourism brand?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think the key things that as you pick, and I want to build on to what you said, is that you cannot be everything to everybody. And I think you started off by saying, first and foremost, segment your market. And from a tourism marketing perspective, when you say you cannot be everything to everybody, decide what is your key thing. Are you into responsible tourism, sustainability, and are you offering, or what products are you offering that are going to meet the expectations of the consumer? Because when the consumer comes into your market, they have a certain perception and they want the brand promise to be met. So if you say that my destination is going to position itself as a destination for safari, or a destination for beach, or a destination for a combination or a myriad of products, then you've got to ensure that what you have promised is going to be delivered. And I think the other key thing also that perhaps for me I feel is also critical is that the whole supply chain, you've got to ensure that the brand promise is met. There's a policy that the government has put in place. The policy has got to support what the private sector is doing. And then when the consumer also comes to the ground, the tour operator, the airline, the travel agency, the hoteliers, all have got to be aligned in such a way that they are giving the perspective of the industry and the expectations of the market. The third thing also perhaps we can pick is that crises often do happen. And we cannot live in a situation where we say, it will never happen to my market. But I think the key thing that I see is that when it happens, or if it does quite happen, then it's important for us to learn that you've got to first and foremost give accurate information. Silence, silence, silence is not the way to go. If it does happen, let the market know exactly what it is, what has happened, and give accurate and correct information. The second thing also which is related to that in terms of provision of information is to ensure that you isolate the incident so that you're not given a blanket coverage that Africa is like this. Say the truth and isolate the incident so that people get to know exactly what has happened. What we've seen from our perspective is that it's always important to have a response team so that you know who is saying what and is saying to who. Otherwise, when you leave it to the market to say what they want to say, chances are that you're going to clutter the world by telling them, by different people saying different things, which may not necessarily be adding value to the brand. And the final thing also that is important for us to mention is that when you look at the entire offer of the product, it's very, very important, and I believe it's, for me, it's important that you're looking at things from a holistic perspective. And looking at things from a holistic perspective in terms of the service, the product, and all that goes to add value to your brand equity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Going into post-elections, going into a whole new 10, 20 years, where do you want to see Johannesburg as a tourism destination?
Well,
I'll give you 5 years. Another 20 years. I'll give you the 5 years.
Well, as I said at the beginning, that, you know, there may be strategies nationally, and everything is coming from an umbrella. But at the end of the day, everything happens at the local level. That's where development takes place. So for me, where I would like to see Joburg is at a stage where there is an understanding that local government has a very, very important role to play in terms of tourism development, where that message goes through that, yes, we talk about tourism, but you have a role as a local government to plan for things to be happening. For those people to be coming here, you as the local government, you have a responsibility. That's the message that I would like to see actually in all the municipalities, if I can put it that way. It's not a question of Joburg only. And once there is that understanding, then there will be once there's that understanding of the role of local government is there, then there will be that ability in the policy making that says, whatever I do as Johannesburg Roads Agency, or Johannesburg Transport, or Johannesburg City Parks, has an impact on tourism. Because this is a broad industry that is impacted by everything that is happening in the city. So whatever pothole that is not fixed, or robot that's not working, impacts on the image of the destination. So the city, if there is that understanding that the city as a whole needs to play a role in terms of tourism development, that's what I would like to see happening in Joburg. And a point where there's a level of maturity, even in the industry. You know, when I compare Johannesburg and Cape Town, I mean, I've attended so many road shows that South African tourism has facilitated. With Cape Town, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about education. With Cape Town, you find that the products themselves sell the destination. They are the ones who are there saying, come to Cape Town. But for Joburg, you find that it's only Joburg tourism that is there. And this is supposedly a partnership and not a question of, no, Joburg tourism, you are there to sell Joburg. That's all. I'm not going to go there as a product, as a, you know, it's your role. In Cape Town, it's different. Call it experience, call it maturity, I don't know what it is. But there is that level of understanding by the products to say, well, here, I'm saying come to Cape Town. At the end of the day, it's my product that I'm calling you to. It's the benefit of the city. So that's what I would like to see in Joburg in the next 5 years.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Lisa. You've spoken a bit about where you would like to see, and you know, a slight difference in how to approach SME development and support in tourism that's been created, that you've been a part of for many years. A model that's been sustainable. And we hear you when you said that maybe we shouldn't have done, you know, the lessons, one of the key lessons learned was that we should have had fewer quality, you know, sort of smaller group of SMEs versus larger group. What advice would you give another nation, another African destination, in terms of developing a partnership of the nature that has been developed by tourism as a partnership?
Well, I think firstly to recognize the importance of small businesses. They provide jobs. Gillian alluded to the livelihood ratio. I think it's one person supporting six individuals. So given that ratio, we see the importance of organizations such as TEC. But SMEs need to be incorporated into the entire visitor experience. They can't be seen as a stepchild. Partnerships, as I said, are incredibly important. Support of SMEs is not just government's job, it's also the role of the private sector. We've had incredible partnerships with City Lodge, with Buddhism Leisure, where the GMs of these hotel groups, they actually mentored our tourism SMEs, and it's an incredible experience. So we need to see more of those partnerships. We've now got a partnership with Rennies as well. So we can't do it alone as government, or as NGOs, we an NGO. Private sector needs to step up to the plate as well. We've also had great partnerships with South African tourism, so you need to have partnerships at provincial level and partnerships at national level as well. Through our partnerships with SAT, we were able to facilitate access for our SMEs to the German, the French, Netherlands and Asian markets, and that would not have happened without South African tourism. So that's quite important. We need to recognize the importance of rural areas. Places such as Paternoster, Coffee Bay, they're little economic ecosystems within themselves. So we can't ignore the importance of that. And then I think lastly, just to recognize that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We need to implement interventions that are relevant to each and every SME. Otherwise, we're really shooting blindly. So to constantly do research in the industry and identify what the successes are, the challenges, the needs, and to modify your interventions in the models based on that. We can't be doing the same thing for 10 years. We're going to lose track. The industry is going to go ahead of us.
Wonderful. And the last question to Enda. A destination marketed through Cape Town tourism. You've spoken a bit about the evolution and the transformation and us moving forward. If you were given second opportunity to redo some of the stuff that was done 20 years back, what would the one most essential point be that you would have done differently?
Talk about a tough question. The one thing. I think the one thing that I've learned about is don't change it. Because it's not about one event, it's about the collaboration of events that get you to your point where you are now. The important point about being where we are now is to look back and say, what have we learned? And what are we going to learn from that and apply going forward? Because to change one event, there's always has a, incidental resulted or something else. And I can take Gautrain as a good example. So the minute Gautrain came in, it took people directly from the airport to Sandton. It bypassed all the accommodation establishments that used to get business along the way because they were closer. So it's about incidental results. So for me, the thing is not to change one thing. It's to learn from the past, not to make the same mistakes. But the important thing is for us to continue to innovate as a destination. Global competition is tougher. African competition is tougher. We shouldn't become complacent as destinations, even though we can become number one on so many lists. And I think that's the one thing that, as Cape Town, is that now that we're number one on different rankings, it's not to become complacent. It's to use it as an opportunity to promote what's great about Africa, and then using Cape Town maybe as a gateway into Africa. So for us, the important thing is about innovating our product offering, our industry, our SMMEs. And I think that's the great thing about Africa, is that we are so new, and that we're not burdened by historical things of, an industry in Germany that's been built up over many years. We can actually pick up on that day and then innovate it. And I think that's the good thing about Africa, if we look at what we've done with mobile, and how we've innovated that. So again, how do we utilize other industries, other technologies, and apply that within the tourism space to deal with third world challenges? That is, for me, is going to be an exciting opportunity of what we do with our destination.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I saw Pelissa smiling there when you spoke about Johannesburg, Cape Town becoming the gateway. Don't ever take that away from Johannesburg. So folks, I'm going to open it up to the audience now to address questions. Please remember, we had a lead speaker as well here. Oh, she's about to leave. Okay, no, that's fine. But if you can recall some of the topics and the points that she raised in her presentation, that even our panelists may be, if they are well equipped, will be able to assist, or we can even open up a very slight discussion around some of those points. I think what we can also do is, if in her absence, if there is anybody who wants to jot it down, perhaps we could always send an email and just find out the response to that particular question. But I'm opening it up now to the audience. We do have a roving mic. And if anybody wants to pose the first question, please, when you do stand up, let us know who you are, where you're from quickly, and who the question is addressed to, if you don't mind. Thank you. Any questions?
Good morning. Is it? An overall comment than a question to any of you. But thank you for your presentations, and thank you also for the Grant Thornton presentation. We've heard a lot about how things have grown and changed over the last 20 years. And the one thing that I picked up consistently throughout all of the presentations, Enver, you talked about it, Pelissa, you talked about it, is the lack of cohesion in our industry. And it's something as a small NPO, the Midlands Meander has been around 30 years. We're small, we're not funded by any government or any other kind of funding. So it's a good place to be. We sit on the outskirts and we watch what happens in the industry. And it's also a great place to be because sometimes you can state the hard truths without knowing, without fear of offending anybody. But to me it seems that there's a need for cross-sectoral cooperation. There are so many different elements and dynamics that affect tourism. For example, from before it was built and continually since then, King Shaka, the fees charged to airlines by King Shaka affect our tourism. I've sat in large presentations where KZN Tourism said we really want to build tourism, we really want to use King Shaka as a gateway to South Africa. Again, apologies. But then at the same time, we get news reports about how there's concern about the cost of landing at King Shaka. There are other issues. Look at India and the cost and the difficulties they're having with visa applications, for example. I know at a local level, as an NPO, we're doing our best to support the DEDT policy on tourism and how that is enacted in public-private partnerships at CTO level, where a CTO, a community tourism organization, is formed as a partnership between local municipality and the local tourism businesses. Now, the policy states that the local municipality has to provide structural and financial support to those CTOs, and yet that's not happening. And the DEDT has no authority over local municipalities at all to enact this policy. It requires cooperation. So I'm giving a couple of examples just to say that I see this as a big picture problem that we have within tourism, is that we have a whole lot of bodies that are highly competent, highly capable, offer a lot of resources, but we need to move up a step and start cooperating across the entire sector, because at the moment things are falling between the cracks. Just an observation, I'd like your response on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chief. Does anybody here within the panel have a response to that? Would like to just add something to it?
Maybe I can make a quick comment. I know that you actually said in his key address, and he said the tourism professional of today no longer just talks about the game parks in your country, the attractions in your country. You're expected to be an expert in aviation. You're expected to know something about infrastructure. You're expected to know something about security. And you're expected to know about a whole host of many other things. And he clearly said that it no longer can be business as usual, where you only talk about your own isolated industry. There's got to be cross-sectoral collaboration. If I look at our case as a country, and zeroing in down in terms of our linkages, as a tourism board, I sit in the board of Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. The reason being, it's very important for us to know the licenses that are being made, applications that are being made, especially those that have a tourism content in it. I also sit in the National Museums of Kenya board because of cultural and heritage tourism. And if we use this as an example, I clearly see a case whereby, as far as tourism is concerned, you've got to have a lot of collaboration with A, the private sector, 2, the government, and also with some multilateral agencies, so that you have a holistic picture, because tourism does not exist in a vacuum. It only exists in a case whereby there's support from a cross-section of these other industries. So I totally agree with you with what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, and thank you for adding to that. Oh, yes, please.
This, based on what you just said, it goes back to the role of the destination marketing, destination management organization. Because that body, which represents the industry, is doing all that. The Kenya Tourism Board is doing that, coordinating with the industry, sitting there, and understanding what the challenges are and what needs to be looked at as within the destination. So that body will always have a role to play, because it will not be a particular hotel group that does that. It won't be a particular convention center that does that. It has to be a body, a destination management body. And fortunately, unfortunately, the government has a role to play there, because it represents the destination at the end of the day.
Beautiful. Thank you ever so much, Tam. All right, any other question? Next question, please. We've got two on this side. Would you be able to let Elsa? Sir, will be coming through to you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Elsa Kampur, representing the World Tourism Organization as the Director for the Africa Program. Just to add on to what the lady said earlier and what was picked up by my colleague from Kenya, you are so right when you say that you need to have these issues brought to a different level. And at the UNWTO, as part of our work program, we look at these issues, and it's having alliances either within the UN system itself or outside of it, working with our members, that we're able to also push ahead with these issues that are on our agenda. For example, you talked about air connectivity. It is an issue that we are dealing with, and for the first time, we've managed, together with ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization, to bring together not only tourism ministers, but transport ministers, to discuss at this high level these very issues. But of course there are other issues, and as I say, it's working through different alliances, either within the system or outside of it, that will help us to continue to address it. I just wanted to add on to that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Manuel Bormann. I'm from GIZ, German Development Corporation. And I just have a question for Mrs. Mankou. Is that the right pronunciation? I hope I did. I heard these remarks that Johannesburg has the disadvantage of not having any iconic products as opposed to Cape Town. I think that was some of the points that were made, and I just want to say as an outsider from Germany that Soweto has a very, very strong, iconic brand. It is recognized in Germany. And 10 years ago, when I was first here, I never dared to go to Johannesburg because of the crime rate that I heard about. And then 5 years later, I came to Soweto, and it was a really, important experience for me. And I realized the quality of the tourism product, the historical tourism product. And then when I come to places like Maboneng, like last year I was in Maboneng for the first time, and it reminded me of what made Berlin great as a tourism destination. This is one of the most successful tourism stories in Europe, is Berlin. And it is not because of the Brandenburg Gate or any all of those historic buildings. It's actually the vibrant culture of Kreuzberg, the club scene there, and the history of East Germans, West Germans growing together, of the Turkish community, building a lot of, a very big aspect of the city life. So this is what draws tourists from all over the world to Berlin, and this is what reminded me, Maboneng reminded me of this vibrant culture. Yeah. So I think there is definitely a position for Joburg and for the different neighborhoods in Joburg to actually become iconic, or even capitalize on the iconic images that places like Soweto already have.
Thank you. Yes, that is very true. But remember what he said about you need to identify what is it about you as a destination that you have, and not be all over. For us as Johannesburg, we are saying we're out of the 3 competing cities, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban, what is it that makes us different from these 2? For us, it's the business tourism aspect. So leisure tourism